It is depressing that one has to reiterate the point that the varying bad guys in history did indeed do and continue to do evil and despicable things. This is well documented and indeed true. What is not true, however, is that there ever were good guys. They never existed, at least not as a national or cultural identity. Even in defeat, the really bad guys left one twisted, enduring legacy that continues to reap havoc to this day. They made the other bad guys briefly look good in comparison. There is no major or colonial power whose history is not drenched in the blood of innocents, be it their own exploited masses, or, when this exploitation becomes too unpalatable at home, to export this exploitation overseas. Any serious look into the history of any country will quickly reveal vested interest groups exploiting anything they can get away with and suppressing anyone in their way, regardless of the type of power structures they might find themselves in. The problem really began, however, once nations and groups started to actually want to believe that they were the good guys. Naturally, without wanting to give up any of their bad habits, of course. Morals and ideas of good and evil used to be the domain of religion. The legacy of their hypocrisy should have been enough warning, in of itself, when you come to think of it. The rapid rise of nationalism as a part of personal identity quickly led to the need, just like with religion before it, to always portray oneself as righteous and good, or to completely cover up or ignore the bits too unsavory for even the spin masters to make palatable. Like religion, soon a dogma emerged with the veil of historic greatness, mythologized to a point so as to be unassailable by any logic. Any criticism of the system was viewed as heresy and dealt with much like in the religions of old. Nationalism is a religion. It has all of the hallmarks, mechanisms, structures, and logical and emotional tropes as religion. And capitalism is monarchy, the hereditary transfer of power, an unashamed nepotism of the circles of power, disenfranchising the masses and gradually eroding them of freedoms and the access to capital. Their quasi monopoly of the judicial, legislative, and executive branch of government creates systems designed to impoverish the masses to the benefit of the elites and keep them suppressed and docile while the differing interest groups play out their power games to the detriment of the workers who keep society functioning. We are already at the stage where we are being forced to become rent slaves, nothing more than debt serfs to pay a hefty fee for being allowed to follow our own paths, always paying a tithe to those who control the licenses, own the properties, and control the capital. The last generation that could afford to buy and own their own property is already past, and the system is already in place that even those that are able to pass on their property are ever more hindered and enticed to relinquish their hold to the larger landowners. Just like the game Monopoly, the game is already over. It is only a matter of time until the last remaining land is forced to be relinquished to those who have the unassailable advantage. Then we really will return to the time of aristocrats and debt slaves, if on a different scale and under a different name. And all this still has to be framed in a world where this corrupt system supposedly represents the only alternative, the good alternative. In the ultimate case of survivor bias, we are fearmongered into believing there is no alternative. There is a reason that the corrupt nobility of old always had a large army of peasants that were willing to fight against the rebels. None of those foot soldiers ever believed that they were fighting for the wrong side. No one ever does, scarily enough. So here we are, pointing at someone even worse than our own elites, taking direct action to subjugate and oppress others, while our own elites use lawyers and the media to hide the deaths and despair that their own greed and dealings continue to produce daily. No one ever pulled the trigger. Our elites just knowingly set up the conditions where human suffering, death, and misery are tolerated, and often encouraged, as it benefits their greed and often their racist aims. And the scariest thing is, they are less and less bothered to even hide it, or even feign public shame at its occurrence. They just twist the narrative to sell it as a necessary evil, a price we have to pay for the fewer and fewer privileges as we the masses have, so that they may still live in luxury while we toil for the scraps, because there is no alternative. Or at least that is what they are so desperately hoping we still believe. until they are in a position where they no longer have to worry about maintaining the lie at all, because they can coerce as much as necessary. Or perhaps we have already reached this stage. The really bad guys may be the catalyst for the downfall, but it is the ones masquerading as the good guys who have set the playing field to be doomed to fail. We need to address all those who do not work in the interests of humanity and our combined growth and ascension, not just the villains of the month, useful in distracting from the horrors and injustices supposedly undertaken in our name. The enemy lies within as well as without. We are good because we do good, act good, not because of who we belong to, who we associate with. Take care and all the best.